Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Hayden.
And we are teachers.
You couldn't have stopped more abruptly there. We are teachers. Am I supposed to come in and finish your sentences?
Yeah, I was trying to do something again where like we got quite a few new listeners every week now.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to do something at the start of the episode where we kind of just like don't go straight into some ridiculous random story and we just hope everyone knows who we are.
Okay,
so,
let's tell them. Come on, let's do a quick summary because it's been what we're in the 60s of episodes
I don't even
now,
know, yeah,
aren't we?
loads.
And I think we do presume sometimes that people listen to episode 1 when we introduce this
Who
podcast.
are you then, Hayden? Why are you here?
My name's Hayden. I've been teaching for about 10 years, 9 years, 10 years. You forget at this point, you've been in the game so long. And I'm a year 6 teacher at the moment. I've spent most of my career in year 4 and year 6. And we started this podcast to share the kind of funny side of teaching, but also talk about some of the more serious things that we talk about anyway and vent about. And we were like, let's do it on a podcast so other people can listen to us.
In 2020,
such an ego, we thought we'd do that.
Yeah. Well, it was 2023 and we thought, everyone else has a podcast. So why shouldn't we? And it was really funny because everyone who already had a podcast, I was like, yeah, we should probably join, it's the thing to do right now. And then since then, anyone who started a podcast, I'm like, these people starting podcasts.
Copying us much. Mr. P's, they're like, yeah, copying you. They're copying you.
7 years.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Dylan.
To be fair to you, Dylan, I'm going to come to you.
Okay.
To be fair to you, you did want to do a podcast, probably.
Yeah.
For maybe 3 years leading up to us actually doing it. And I was always like, nah.
It was COVID. I remember in COVID, I was like, people are just sat around and we should probably, put something out there for people to keep them entertained. That'd be really fun. Nah.
Anyway, who are you? Introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Dylan Price. Anyone who's been listening for a long time knows that I'm a primary school teacher, obviously. I actually thought about this the other day. I've spent like 7 years in year 4.
Have you?
Yeah. I did 2 years at the start of my career. I'm in my 4th year now, so 6 years I've been in year 4. I've done year 3, I've done year 5. I've never done year 6 though, and I've only ever worked in junior school, so I've not done Key Stage 1. And it's like, I think in the future we should definitely get someone on the podcast. If anyone knows of anyone who's influential in Key Stage 1 or early years, I'd love to have a chat with them because that seems like a different world to me.
Yeah, it is a different world.
Yeah.
It just is, isn't it? Whenever we do get the chance to speak to someone, like maybe one of our friends, they're like, oh yeah, I work in a through school. I'm always like, oh yeah, I forget there's a whole nother world there of like completely different pedagogy. And
because to me, year 3 is basically starting a brand new school and they feel like brand new kids.
Yeah.
Like, well, actually, in any through school, they are absolutely in with the school ethos. They know what
Halfway
they're doing.
through.
Yeah, 100%. So, I don't know. I find that really interesting. Anyway, we're here. We talk about all things. Hayden was talking about why we started the podcast. The actual reason we started the podcast was because of the strikes. Do you remember?
Yes.
And we were getting a lot of negative media in the press, and we thought, should we just go on and chat? And we did some funny voices and stuff. So if you haven't checked it out, do go back to the start. Do listen through. You can pick which episode you're interested in. Not going to lie, some of them are absolutely brilliant. Some of them are terrible. So it's a bit of a.
I like listening back to the first like 3 or 4, maybe a bit more, where we were like mega conscious about what we were saying, and we were just a bit more radio hosty. But, hello.
Welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat.
And I'd sit there afterwards. I'd spent honestly 3 hours editing it. Any pause that was more than like 0.3 seconds, I'd be like, cut that out, sounds bad. And now it is just raw, uncut. Every episode is just...
These poor people now, the production value usually gets better as time goes on.
It's just gone down.
Nosedive. Talking of production value, I don't know if anyone's, who's listened for a while has noticed anything so far. Please let us know if you have, because we spent about 2 hours sorting out our audio levels, didn't we?
Yes,
the other
we
day?
did. Let us know if it sounds pretty good, pretty juicy.
And if it sounds the same, please don't tell us because we put a lot of time into
And
it.
if it sounds worse, just don't even go there. Yeah. Sorry if you, Dylan. Didn't write it on our notes, so I'm going off script here.
Okay.
I've had a few people recently that obviously listen to our podcast, friends as well, just saying, it's coming up to me and being like, how's Need financial planning? Is he all right? After you referenced him like as if that's his name in that episode. So I thought that was quite funny.
I love the idea we've got recurring characters now. And Need financial planning is one. I think we should never say his real name again.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Need financial planning wouldn't want his name shared. That is his name.
Yeah. Legally changed it.
One of our tutors I was speaking to the other day, who also lives around here, was saying that she was in Broadstairs recently and saw his shop. I was like, I was with her mates. Like, that's old Need financial planning from the Teach, Sleep, Repeat podcast. So he's from that.
From that?
Yeah.
This guy's built his whole career as an amazing financial advisor.
Yeah,
and he's just known as the guy from Teach, Sleep, Repeat.
I hope so. So I just thought it was quite funny that...
well, if anyone does need any financial planning, pensions...
I don't know where to go, actually, for that, do you?
Could go to Need financial planning. But no, he's fantastic. He's done our mortgages and stuff, hasn't he? So especially with the interest rates at the minute, it's still not coming down.
Yeah, I know. Horrendous. I do quite like the idea of just continually forever having a sponsor that's just it's not really a sponsor.
Not
We're just
remotely.
like paid sponsors. No. We've got this joke sponsor that we have with our mate.
It's not even a joke. It's a real business
I know,
where you
it's
can
like-
really go and get good
But
things.
we'll say sponsored by It's like not.
It's the worst. It's actually the worst middle ground possible. Where we're not taking the mitt. We used to do old sponsors. Do you remember? We're like sponsored by Wellbeing and Ofsted, and we just take the mitt.
Yeah.
And then the other end is an actual sponsor where we get paid. We've done the middle ground. We're just giving like New Financial Planning. I was going to say his real name. It's free. I think it's brilliant. It's hilarious.
Oh dear.
Because who needs to make money from a podcast anyway?
No, not us.
Definitely
That's
not
for
us.
sure.
That's for sure.
Anyway, back to the customers.
Yeah. Hey, customers. So yeah, let's catch up with our week then, Hayden. I'm going to start.
Yeah, you start.
Because I had a moment this week which just absolutely cracked me up. And you'll know about this because you are the instigator of said thing. So anyone, again, listening for a long time to the podcast, you might remember Baby Mr. Price. Now, what happened was I planned a lesson probably about 3 years ago now, where one of the hooks were, I'm always looking for hooks when you plan lessons with the children just to get them remotely interested in what you're doing. Because let's be honest, maths word problems can be quite boring. So, you have control over the people you put in. It's very common for a teacher to put in the names of the children in the class, the teachers in the school. Very easy way to hook. My hook was I got a picture of myself as a baby and I put it on the screen and it was like this. I had like a photo shoot and the joke is I simultaneously look 3 and 73. Like
Yeah,
it's
so
such a
funny.
weird one. We'll
It's
post
the
it on
pose.
Instagram
It's the
again.
pose, yeah.
So Hayden took his opportunity to take this photo from the planning and he's made little cards like Pokemon cards, like trading cards, only it's just me.
Yeah.
And every year he only prints 9. And there's 100 kids in like
Not
the
even every
group.
year, by the way. It's so much more special than that. Like
Really?
I've done it twice in like 3 or 4 years.
Even better.
And this year I printed 9.
Well, this year, this cohort had me in year 3 and year
Yeah,
4.
so
So
they know
they
you.
very much know who I am and they always come and see me and it's lovely. And as soon as Hayden made this thing, Baby Mr. Price, I've had kids coming up to me. I had to sign the card. They were, can you sign the card, please, on the back? So I've been signing stuff in Sharpies, saying well done because they have to do something above and beyond to get a card.
Yeah, I made them extremely hard to get.
It's
And I
good. It's
told
like-
them, I was like, they are collectible. I'm
Yeah.
never going to make these again. I'm not making more. There's
It's
9.
like house points on steroids, isn't
Yeah,
it?
literally. And I was like, I don't know what. They were like, what do I have to do to get one? I was like, I don't know. It just has to be a spur of the moment. Like, you have to do something great. I don't know, in your lesson, outside of lesson, whatever. I was like, but there's only 9 and I will give them out over the next couple of weeks.
Have you gone all out now?
They're all gone now as of
You should
this
print
week.
one more for Sats Week. And
Like,
really
someone said
hook
to me,
them.
do a shiny one. You know, like Pokemon, just do one shiny one.
Holographic Mr. Price. Anyway, yesterday I went to get my hair cut and I was walking back to the car and through the car park I went past Morrison's and I thought I'll nip into Morrison's, I'll get some food for dinner. So I went in and I noticed a child who's in year 6 who I used to teach. And obviously it was that awkward moment where for like 10 seconds I was like, do I say hello? Do I just walk on by?
Yeah.
Because if she sees me, obviously she'll want to chat. And anyone who's a teacher in that
Obviously.
situation always is like, well, I don't know. Anyway, I was walking past and her dad was at the end and we saw each other. And obviously I was like, oh, hello, because we're going to talk later about building relationships with parents. But I knew this parent quite well. We're chatting away. He was asking me about Rory. It was lovely. And then all of a sudden the girl just said, oh, wait. Mr. Price, I've got something. And I was like, oh, okay, what's that? And she was like patting around her pocket. She was like, oh, where is it? Where's this thing? She went into her pocket and pulled out a picture of me as a baby. She had a Mr. Price laminated card, held it up, and I just saw for a minute her dad was like, what? And I was like, oh,
Weird.
I didn't give you that though, did I? I didn't give you that picture of me. That was Mr. Stevens. Like, even though it's funny, it's like the idea of me giving out cards of me as a baby to the children is just like, for God's sake. And she was so happy. She was like, look, I've got this. And I was like, oh, that Mr. Stevens, eh? Like looking at the dad, like,
Yeah.
I've not been given that
like?
picture. What's going on?
That is perfection.
Unbelievable.
That is
She was so
absolutely-
excited.
I honestly, I can't think of a better conclusion to those cards. Like that is the ultimate. I couldn't have planned that. Do you know what I mean? I would have dreamed about. Wouldn't it be so funny if one of these found its way to Mr. Price like out of school?
But her
Yeah.
dad was like, what's that? And I was like, it's me as a baby. And you can just see like, that's a bit
So
odd.
perfectly awkward for you, and I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, hilarious. Hilarious.
That is brilliant. What a story.
Ridiculous. I know you wanted to talk about something that cropped up online.
Yeah, well, I'll get it on my phone. So I was scrolling through Facebook as I do.
Yep.
And there's an anonymous teacher group. Well, I say anonymous. This person posted anonymously in this teacher group, and I asked him just for full clarification. I asked this person if I could share it on the podcast
Sure.
because it was anonymous. Since then, it's done the rounds, by the way. So if you're listening to this, obviously in the future, I think Mr. P's actually also picked up on this, and I've seen a few other people posting it. So it's done the rounds, but I just want to say, I found it first. I'm joking. It doesn't matter. But I want to talk about it anyway. So this is what they posted, right? And I just want to get your reaction on this because
Yeah,
it's
go on.
mad. This is a random one. Can't quite believe I'm posting this, but today I was pulled into the office because some of my books in the reading corner were upside down.
Christ.
I was told this had to be sorted. Because Ofsted came. If Ofsted came, they would definitely pick up on this.
Oh my God.
And they just said, am I being insane to think this is definite nitpicking? It is a working classroom and my children absolutely love accessing our reading corner, so regularly go in and browse a selection of books.
What was the... I've got a reaction to that.
Yeah,
what was the general reaction first?
The general reaction is exactly what you'd hope it would be, which is, what on earth are you talking? Like, this is mental.
Yeah, absolutely
the SLT
mad.
are being absolutely mad.
So this is what I was going to pick up on. What on this story, right? I actually don't... My first thought isn't to blame Ofsted, because I know it was given as Ofsted will pick up on this. I think a lot of people might look at that and be like, bloody Ofsted. I don't think Ofsted would pick up on it. I think that's the SLT being absolutely insane.
Yeah.
That's my
There's got
gut
to be a
instinct.
line, isn't there? Because, like, a bit of common sense would tell you that Ofsted aren't going to pick up on that.
I don't think that. Maybe they would. Maybe I'm being really naive.
There's no way they would.
But having gone through Ofsted once, I've only gone through once, but having heard other people as well, I don't feel like that's part of their priority list.
You put things into, like, I don't know, 5 degrees of nitpicking, right? This one's right at the bottom, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, when Ofsted came in, they did barely picked up on the 3 tiers above that.
Yeah, sure.
There's no way they're going to be like, ooh, why are them books upside down? Oh, the kids were reading them and they're 8. So when they put it back in...
If you have a picturesque book corner, I always think, are the kids ever using it?
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a bit messy, I'm like...
Isn't it proof, if it's upside down, that a child has read it?
Well, if anyone out there has a book corner that their children don't use, turn them upside down.
Yeah,
it'll look like they do.
So,
that's insane. I think the buck has to stop at some point with that kind of SLT. To me, and this might sound insane again to other people, that is enough for me to realise that I would not want to work in that school. If that is deemed acceptable by those people in charge as something that you can say to someone, where I'm sure at the same point, you know, they've also spent their weekend planning an English curriculum, right?
Yeah.
If that is what you think is deemed acceptable to pull someone aside and moan at them for, I think that's a toxic school and you should get out. And do you think that's too far?
A lot of people said the same thing. A lot of people said that. They were like, you should leave the school. So one of the comments was interesting because someone actually came in kind of defending it. Well, not defending it really, but they were just like, let's just calm down a bit because we all know the pressures. They went back to the Ofsted point. They were like, we all know the pressures of Ofsted, right? And it does make people do mental things. Yeah. So let's maybe not like, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Just bin off the SLT immediately as the worst place ever and leave the school. Maybe just have a conversation with them and be like, are you okay? Like, are you sure? Because I don't think this is something Ofsted would pick. I think it's very easy to say this is definitely not something that Ofsted is going to pick up on.
And I suppose that would be the next step, I guess. And if at that point they double down and still have a go at you, I think at that point you can be like, okay.
At that point, it's like, okay, now you're just being an idiot.
Because we know the type of person who would make that a problem. Like everyone knows that kind of person who'd work in a school, not been in the classroom for 15 years, thinks that's important for some reason.
They've sort of forgotten.
Yeah, just almost forgotten. Like, that's okay to say. It's just books upside down. I'm helping them. I'm just gonna say to someone, just turn your books upside down. Ofsted wouldn't like that. I maybe it's because I'm in the classroom and I see book corners in use every day.
Yeah.
I just couldn't care less. Obviously, every now and then I have monitors for the book corner. I'm like, oh, you two, could you just go and clean up that book corner? It's a bit messy at the minute.
Yeah,
but in the meantime, geez, like,
it doesn't matter.
Get over it.
Just to clarify, because obviously that is just like a mad example, like absolutely mad. I agree with you. I don't think that's Ofsted pressure. I think that's just SLT not doing their jobs properly and not knowing what the hell Ofsted want. But do you think, just to clarify, because I don't want to give the impression that we think something we don't. Do you think that Ofsted do have a part to play in some of the pressures that are put on teachers in schools from SLT specifically, like silly things?
95% of them. This is in the 5%.
Yeah,
like 95% of the stuff that as teachers burn us out and affect our well-being from SLT that are deemed as because Ofsted. I'd say 95% of them are because of Ofsted.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you know, if you've had to give someone in the school for no extra time or pay the art leadership, and then SLT are like, oh, this progression document just doesn't quite cut it from year 3 to 5 in terms of how we do line sketching, right? Can you sort it out? Like, that's also to me insane. Like, what am I going to do? But that is directly because of the Ofsted framework, which says that we could be deep dived in anything. Art could be one of them, so you need to get it sorted. Like, so in that respect, I'm like, I have all sympathy of SLT. I still think there's a degree of responsibility, and that's why I think being SLT is incredibly hard in a school, because you've got to be the middleman, where you have to take into account well-being, but you also need to live up to the Ofsted
meet
framework,
the
or
needs.
else your school gets rinsed by Ofsted.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm not pretending it's easy, but I think 95% of the time we can point to Ofsted. Little things like this, I think that's where SLT can really have small wins and really have the back of your staff and really put well-being first in that respect. I think that the front foot has to come from SLT until Ofsted is reformed. And that's a really hard job. And I don't want to be SLT bashing, because so many SLT members do so well in that regard. Like, you know, there might be SLT out there who won't move people because they want to give people a bit of rest, because you're moving them up to year 6 from year 4. That's a huge amount of workload change because you're used to teaching where you are. Or, you know, there might be SLT who purposefully book you out for slots of just, you know, here's a wellbeing day, or here's a morning to get ahead on planning because I know that means you do less at the weekend. That kind of stuff is fantastic from SLT, and loads do that. I think these little things, just you have to have that moment of just clarity in your head where you go, oh, I what am I doing? Like that SLT member, I reckon if they just thought about it for 30 seconds, they probably wouldn't have done that. I think they've had a bit of a panic. They've seen somewhere maybe from a colleague in a different school that have just had Ofsted. Ofsted were really positive about reading corners, maybe. That's probably what's happened.
Drawn some conclusions
and
from it
they've gone, oh God, ours are a bit messy. Crap, I've just went round, that's upside down, sort it out, Ofsted want to look for that. It could have been a flying comment off an Ofsted comment that means nothing. And I think it just goes to show the absolute mess we're in, where we are so at the behest of Ofsted that anything we hear, like, it dictates school policy. Doesn't
immediately.
it?
To any detriment.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter.
I know we're going off tangent a little bit, and we'll come back around to the main episode in a minute. I just want to ask you one more thing. So you talked about how with art, for example, we have to, every subject has to be like unbelievably perfect now because they could deep dive anything. Do you like? We had Mr. P on last week, right? And he was on that podcast. I've forgotten what it's called.
The parenting podcast.
He was on the one where he got grilled by the news agents.
News agents.
And I listened to it, and we talked to him a little bit about it, but I never really got to dive deep into those questions because they were really going for him, weren't they? They were
proper
really,
journalistic questions, not like us when we just have a chat.
Yeah, they were like probably putting on the spot, and one of them was about, okay, well, do you not think that teachers should be accountable then, or do you think they should be held like less accountable than they are? And I don't know, I find that question really interesting, like, and it works with the analogy you were giving there. Like, do you think it is bad then that Ofsted are now making it where it's like, oh, actually any of your subjects could get looked at, so they all didn't need to be really good? Like, is that a bad thing then?
Yeah, the only reason it's a bad thing is because we aren't remotely given the resources to live up to that standard. So for me, it's a two-pronged thing, that these two things I'm about to say have to move together. Right. So the standards and, you know, absolute top level that we're supposed to work towards, that can only be as high as the resources and the money and the funding and the time that we're given to do it.
Right.
I think what's really been terrible in the last 15 years or so is I personally don't think that we should be at all budging on the standards of teaching. I think objectively it's actually good that Ofsted have ridiculously high standards. I think that is objectively a good thing on its own in isolation. I think where it really, really falls apart and it can't happen, it can't be the case now, is that does not translate to the funding and the time and the effort and the CPD and the money, quite simply, that goes into school
to do the job.
So what's happening at the minute is that bar has not shifted. If anything, it's got higher, what Ofsted expect from schools. And again, someone can try and do a gotcha. Is that not a good thing? It's like, obviously it's a good thing for our children to have incredibly high standards and bars to live to, right? But it's coming at the detriment of teachers who have to put their well-being and mental health on the line to meet those standards whilst not getting time or money to do so.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if the government think it's acceptable to completely rinse school of funding and make cuts for 15 years in a row, they also, by proxy, are saying it's acceptable to lower standards for schools. And if they're not, what they're doing is having absolutely no indication that they care for teachers' wellbeing or mental health whatsoever. So they have to move together. If you're going to cut schools and funding, you have to lower the bar. And then you have to answer to people who say, why are you lowering the bar? And that'd be a really good question to ask, and it'd be unacceptable. So do you know what you have to do? Get that funding back up so we can give our kids the best education possible.
And meet those standards.
Yeah, because at the minute what's happening is teachers have to have a backbone and say, no, it's breaking me. We have to be the ones who say we can't meet those standards, and then we get digged out for it. It's a classic government manipulation where they'll make cuts. They've done it a million times. Oh, let's make academies. We're going to make cuts, but the academies are in charge of where the money goes. So when the academies don't have enough money to put things in place, it's the academy's fault because they decide where their money goes.
Oh, you should have got a bit better business manager, shouldn't you?
Exactly. Whereas actually what's happened is the amount of money they got in the first place is not enough. So the buck lies with the government. It's terrible.
Brilliant. Great answer.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
Anyway, one last thing before we move on back into the nice thing, because we will got a couple of things we want to talk about. I've just got to say one thing right now to all our listeners. Hayden and I have been going on some luscious post-school sunny walks.
Just me and him holding hands.
No.
We're not saying about those ones.
No,
okay.
no.
Right, sure.
The ones where we're with our children.
The family ones. Sorry.
Our partners.
Sorry,
exactly.
not the private ones.
But the point being, how unbelievably nice is it? Like that's all I want to say. There's not much more really. How unbelievably nice is it to finish work and have the ability to go out on a sunny walk for an hour? It's transformed my well-being personally.
Yeah, and you've got to do it because you only get about 6 of them a year. Well, no, you get more, but sometimes you do. No, it's so good, and I agree. It affects my mood so much. It's unbelievable how much it affects my mood, and the evenings being longer. I get less tired. It's just so many little like psychological tricks, isn't there? It's like I'm just less tired because my brain is like, oh no, it's still daytime. You're fine.
And there's nothing worse than in winter when you leave for school and get back to at home and it's dark both times.
Yeah, dark.
It's like, well, the day's over.
Yeah,
same amount of times in a day, but it just feels so different, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to say that, guys. Get out for a walk. If you think, oh, I can't be bothered, you always feel better for it.
Is that our first tip to new teachers, or are we going to save that for
you're going to
the
save
next
that.
segment?
We got one little segment in between. Let's play the jingle. We've got one little segment, but if you're a new teacher, hopefully we've not turned you off so far and you've gone off. We've got one little segment. We're going to talk about something from Mr. P, actually. The most horrendous insult that you've been given by a child. Let's do it. Right, so I've got my phone because essentially last week with Mr. P, we did a little tiny segment. It wasn't planned. We just kind of told some stories about the worst insults a kid can give you. And the whole point was if we can deal as teachers with some of the insults children come out with, we can deal with pretty much anything. So it doesn't matter what other people say about teaching. It's all right because children have said this to me and something horrendous. And it kind of sparked this comment section of people saying all the worst things that teachers ever said to them. So I thought it would be pretty cool for me to read them out to you, just get your reaction on them.
it.
So I'm going to rinse through some of them. Some of these are so funny.
I love it when they interact with us. It's great.
Yeah, I know, it's
Thanks,
great.
customers.
Send stuff in, guys, as much as possible. Customers, God. Okay. The first time I had highlights, a reception child said to me, "What have you done to your hair? It's got yellow bits in it. Go back home and make it proper again." The next one, I put a bit of makeup on as it was parents' evening, and a year 2 child stared at me with a confused look on her face and said, "Miss, what have you done to your face? You look really weird."
Exposed. That's hilarious.
Once had a student comment, "Miss, that dress is so extra. It's giving me a migraine." It was just stripy. This one cracked me up. I can imagine a child doing this to you.
All right.
I was working, supporting a child who was challenging, and we had just calmed down and we were walking down the corridor to return back to class. They're in a much better place now, and he honestly had a wicked sense of humour when he was on form.
Yeah.
So we are passing a male colleague, coincidentally called Mr. P, because it's on the reel of Mr. P. I said, "Good morning," with a smile, to which Mr. P returned, and also said good morning to the child I was walking with. To which the child stopped, looked at Mr. P up and down, and then said, completely deadpan, "Who dressed you? Your mum?" Shrugged and then kept walking. I literally couldn't look him in the face. It'd be too hard not to laugh, but we did have a laugh about it later in the staff.
That's unreal, isn't it? Yeah.
So to the point.
God.
Who dressed you? This is a bit of a theme with people. It cracked me up because I know you say similar things about yourself. Have you got a baby in your tummy or just too many dinners?
yeah.
Kids and they're not even being horrible. They just think, what are you pregnant then?
Yeah.
It's so brutal.
No, yeah.
It's so brutal. Someone who was brand new into teaching at the time, really young. One of the children said, "Should we actually wait for the real teacher?"
Oh, no way. Kids know that hierarchy though, don't they? They know that in their heads. They're like, "Oh, no.
Well, you're not the teacher.
You're not the real teacher.
You're too young."
Yeah.
I got told I look like the Grinch when I was telling a story the other day. Imagine that. Just kids say, "Yeah, you look like the Grinch." Oh my goodness. This one really, really cracked me up because it's like really endearing at the end, but it's horrible.
Right.
The best kind of insult. Was dealing with a child who had special educational needs, and I was talking to him, trying to turn them around, turn them corner. And in doing so, he told me he could count on one hand how many children actually liked me. He then added that he's one of them children.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's a weird one, isn't it?
How do you take that? That's all I can count on one hand how many people like you, but I'm one of them.
I'm like, is he trying to be horrible or is he trying to be nice? Yeah, sounds like trying to be nice, but doesn't realise that's kind of horrible.
He's probably just telling the truth and thinks it's okay. A lot of these things. Yeah. Right, just a couple more, okay? Cool. "Miss, you look so pretty in your picture on your lanyard. It was. Doesn't look anything like you now, though." How old is your lanyard picture?
Probably about 4 years.
Yeah,
I've
it's
definitely
scary.
messed up. It was like 10 years lanyard picture.
Last one. When I was working in a year 2 class and was 40, one of the boys asked me how old I was. He looked at me shocked and went, "And you're still alive?"
God, that just reminds me of that story of that mum that aged me at 50
Oh, we
plus.
told it a million times.
Oh,
yeah,
I won't tell it again.
so
Go back and find it in one of our episodes. I don't know where it is.
Just basically a mum thought Hayden was
Aged
it.
about 20 years too much by a mum, and they were being genuine. And I was like, oh, that's funny.
Oh god, I put one
Go
on my
away.
story as well. We did get a couple. Sorry, one of them said a reception girl just gleefully pointed to this teacher's top lip and said, "You've got hair." To a female member. "You got hair there?" I was like, "Oh, thank you."
Oh,
Thank you
cheers.
for letting me know. Have you ever had that before? I had a child, I'm sure I've said this, who simply just said to me, just asked me a question, really inquisitively. It was like, "Why have you got spots on your face?" I was like,
So brutal.
How do I say the reason? Because my diet's bad. Like, what do you say to that?
I don't know.
They're not
I don't
saying
know.
you've got spots. They're just like, why?
Well, let's talk about the levels for a second then, because like when you were reading through those, it was funny because my reaction was kind of different. I was thinking about how I react to some of them, and some of them I was like, "Oh, actually, even me, I'm quite banterous at school." Your favorite word?
Banterous?
I did it on purpose with the kids, but there are still some things where I'm like, "Oh no, that is just rude, though. Don't say that."
Well, we were thinking about this, weren't we, recently? There were 3 levels to this, right? So to me, when children are pushing up, like being insulting, essentially, there's 3 levels, and one of them's kind of awkward. So there's one really obvious one where a child is just being rude. They're just outright being rude. It's not based on anything you've done before. It's just like, you're just being horrible and I need to sanction this behavior and I need to make sure you know that's unacceptable. That's really easy to deal with. There's also the other end, which is also, in my opinion, quite easy to deal with. Like when a reception child says you've got hair on your upper lip. They're just being innocent, pointing something out, which you're insecure about and it's not nice.
Yeah, they haven't really learned yet that maybe that's
Sure.
me. And
There's no malice there.
You don't want to get... The reaction's got to be different, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got. You can teach them something still.
Yeah.
But you cannot say to them, "Oh, you're being horrible."
But that
to
kid
me.
is like, "Why have you got spots?"
Yeah.
Probably it would be different if they stood up in front of the class, was already smirking, looking around at their mates, getting ready to make them laugh, and went, "Oh, Mr. Spice, why are you so spotty?"
Yeah.
and started laughing with their mates. In that situation, that context, I'd be like, "No, you were just being horrible to try and make people laugh at my expense, and not even in like a jokey way. Like you were just being horrible."
The one in that situation, it was like literally 1-to-1. I was just helping with her work,
different.
and no one else heard it. She was just asking, and I was like, she is just asking. So so they're the 2 that I think are easy to deal with. Where do you stand? Because I know you and I, part of our teaching style, and again, we will come on to this, new teachers who are still listening, we will come on to it, I promise. But part of our advice is, building that relationship. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we try and have a really nice relationship with our class where they enjoy being in the room. Part of that is it being fun, engaging, and part of them is that wanting to be in the room. And we know children aren't our friends, but we want children to want to be in our classroom, and that involves them liking their teacher and their teacher liking them, right? And there's always this middle ground where you've kind of been jokey, maybe, boulder locks and the 3 hairs, always, that's always comes to my mind. You might say, "Oh, yeah, he's an ogre living under the troll talking about me." That kind of level of like, it's harmless, it's between us, they know we're friends, blah, blah, blah. But then when a child, for example, I had a child say to me once, we were doing Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, and we were doing, I think, a character description on Mr. Tumnus. Well, they knew who Mr. Tumnus was anyway. And this child just said, who I've got a nice relationship with, who we have jokes about sometimes, he said in front of the class, no, that's Mr. Dumbness over there talking about me.
Pointed at you.
Pointing at me with a little smirk on his face.
Yeah.
Again, I think this is the middle ground. I don't think he was trying to he wasn't being horrible.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to get to me. He was trying to make me laugh. He thought that was funny. He wasn't doing it innocently, but he wasn't doing it maliciously. There's that weird middle ground.
Would he have done it with another teacher?
I don't think he would have.
Which was proof that he's trying to fulfill this relationship that you've built with him that is kind of based on a bit of humour every now and then.
Sure, but at the end of the day, they are children. And I can't trust that they'll get the nuance of you can't do that to another teacher because I've built maybe a surrounding where he thinks that's acceptable.
Yeah.
So I look at myself in that situation and I think, am I being hypocritical here to then pick him up on it? But I felt the need to pick him up on it and just as a learning experience say, that's not appropriate really, is it, in front of the whole class to say something like that?
Yeah.
But I didn't want him to think, what is the kind of joke you might
we
make
always
about
have these jokes.
Mr. Stevens or one-to-one or something like that. You know, where do you stand on that kind of middle? How do you balance that? Because again, teachers will struggle with that, and because of that struggle of where's acceptable, they'll go to one end or the other. They'll go completely unacceptable, let all, you know, it's not acceptable to let a kid say what they want. But it's also, I don't think, the best practice to not have any kind of joke or laugh with your children. How do you manage that middle ground?
I think there is a middle ground for a start. I don't think you have to be on either end.
Sure.
Of like, you can never have jokes or it's just gone too far. I do think sometimes we're a bit hypocritical. I think, you know, we're still on that process of maybe there's probably been a few things where we're like, actually, we probably should have done that differently.
Even this many years in.
You know, because like the kids will occasionally from year 4 who are super hyped up, and I'll be walking past the field or something, and they will go, Goldilocks. And I'm like,
we've lent into that,
yeah, we've let into that, but out of context, someone else listening or a parent or something, it is like, that does sound bad.
Sure.
That does sound like I've got no control over them. Whereas really, they're just desperately trying to make a funny relationship with me because of the relationship that me and you have that they've been privy to. You know, I don't know. But there is definitely a middle ground. I think the best way to tackle it, and I do this as well, same as you, like actually saying to that kid, well, that wasn't appropriate, even though you do joke, is just take that meta approach all the time. When we do have those jokes with the kids, if I do joke about you in the class, you know, and I'll be like, oh gosh, sorry, I thought that, you know, a funny picture will come up and I thought that was Mr. Price for a second. I will also go out of my way to explain to them why that's a joke, why it was acceptable in that moment, but why other things wouldn't be funny. I don't know, I really try to explain. And when kids do something that crosses the line, I will always take the time to be like, oh no, that was actually just rude, and this is why. Because it's like that. It would be funny if this situation was funny. That was just rude because like you're just trying to get a laugh out of me, like to make your friends laugh, but actually it could have just hurt my feelings. I don't know.
Yeah, I think because it's really powerful with children when you're disciplining them.
Just explain.
Like I think a lot of teachers are getting old school, maybe not necessarily these days, but the old school approach. And I hated this as a child when anyone did this, whether it was my parents, teacher at school, because that's why, or because I'm an adult. I've always disliked that personally. And I'm not saying I'm perfect because I've definitely used the teacher line because I'm in charge, like when I can't be bothered. But I think when you're really trying to dig deep and build those kind of long-lasting understanding of like social like structures and what's acceptable in relationships with people, I think there's something really powerful in it being explained.
Yeah.
And in the same way that I would explain how culture has changed over the Roman Empire because of things as a teacher, I think it's my job also to explain and teach children why something might be deemed unacceptable or acceptable and help them on their way. And if a child wrote the wrong answer to, you know, a historical change of power, right, I wouldn't get annoyed at them. I would teach them why they were wrong and what the right answer is. I kind of take the line of, cool, well, if a child's done that, what I deem innocently, okay, or even not innocently, the first couple of times I'm going to take the line of, okay, I'm going to teach you why this is wrong and how to get better. If they carry on, even in the example of the lesson, I might start thinking, are you being lazy now? Are you not taking this in? If I've exhausted all other options, same with behavior. If they're still going at it, I'm like, cool, well, you're making this choice now because I've explained to you very clearly multiple times why it's unacceptable. You're still doing it. So at this point, it's moved into the unacceptable category and then you're going to you're going to be sanctioned.
Yeah. Also, at the end of the day, social boundaries and all that stuff is really complex.
It's confusing.
And the kids do need to learn it. And I do think...
the way I talk to you is not the way I would talk to another member of staff.
No.
Like,
exactly.
Even outside of teaching, but also in the classroom, I would feel more comfortable with someone, you know, putting you on the spot and being like, go on then, Mr. Stevens, what do you think? If it was someone else, I wouldn't want to put them on the spot because I don't know how they'd react to
that. And as an adult, other members of staff or people in general can view the way we talk to each other and work out how they should still interact with us. They don't just automatically... This is where kids fall down. Adults have got the ability to look and go like, oh, those two interact like that because of their individual relationship. I shouldn't go in and say that thing that Dylan just said to Hayden because it would be viewed differently. I've got to build up a relationship in a different way. And kids don't know that straight away. And that's the bit I think we need to teach them. I've always been a massive fan of teaching kids humility, like teaching kids to just be able to sort of laugh at themselves, teach them when someone's intent is not what they think, because they just take the words on face value at a young age, don't they? When a kid hears someone say something and they take it so to heart, and I'm like, oh no, they were actually just joking and trying to be your mate, and you didn't pick that up. This kid over here that called you that, they're being horrible. Do you know what I mean? They're totally different. They don't get it, and I think there is a place for what we do. I just think you have to be very careful not to be blasé about just insulting other teachers and having banter with the kids, and then they don't understand the social boundaries at all and actually start just being rude and horrible and doing things that most people would be like, oh, don't do that. Yeah, because it's our job to teach them.
You'd be gutted, wouldn't you, if one of your kids got into trouble with someone else for doing something you deem acceptable with them. So if you're like, well, that's okay in this because we've got this relationship. If then a child went and did it with another teacher and got in trouble, that would be my fault. I would see that as my fault. And I'd be like,
the one example the one that you read there, one of the examples that really stuck in my head was the dress one. Who dressed you? Your mother.
Yeah.
That one, whatever that was. Because I was thinking, God, you know what? I find that really rude. I think I'd actually be quite annoyed at that kid if I was the teacher walking past. And if it was one of your class who said that to me, I'd be a bit like, if it was completely out of context, I'm just walking past, I'd be like, I'd actually probably tell that kid off.
Yeah. Or at least explain to them that's not acceptable.
That was really rude and so unnecessarily mean.
Yeah.
But I don't know the context. For all I know, that kid and that teacher that he said it to have this running joke already.
Yeah.
Do you know where he maybe said to the kid, "Oh, did your mum dress you today?" Because his jumper was on backwards or something.
Right.
And then the kid, there's so much nuance there.
There might be, we don't know.
There could be.
Yeah.
So I don't want to jump the gun and be like, "Oh, that kid should have been sanctioned."
Well, I think that's where people land sometimes. It's like, cool, okay, well, because there's this difficulty, teacher respect, top of the line, no messing around,
Yeah.
I think as a teacher, I struggle with that. I struggle maintaining that, not being able to have that bond. Let's go into some advice then. We'll play the jingle.
Yeah.
Advice for new teachers. I think it's good for all teachers, to be honest, but I really want to narrow down into now, Hayden and I, if we had an ECT who's just finished, their trainee who's just finishing their training this year and are starting the job in September, what would we say to them as our top advice? We put together some good tips, I think. So should we go through them?
Let's get to it.
Okay, Hayden, shoot. Go first.
Shoot. You looked really ugly then.
I don't know what I was going to say other than just trying to pass the baton to you in 5 seconds.
Yeah, okay.
So Hayden, you've got the first tip. We're going to alternate. We've brought our own tips here. They kind of go in order, I suppose. So you got the first one for a reason.
Yeah, the first one, almost in chronological order, really. Like, if you're at the point now where you're thinking you're applying for schools and all that, it can be quite a scary experience, right? If you're applying for schools are so different. I can't describe to you how much. Like, if you see one school and think, oh, guess that's just what they're like. No, it's not. I promise you can go to another school and it'll be completely different. So look around, really trust your gut feeling about whether you as a person want to work there. Try to remove I do need a job for September though. I know that's a pressure because it's like, I do kind of just need a job though. And it might be the only interview you've got, whatever. But if you've had the chance to look around a few schools, feel the vibe. Honestly, you just go and talk to some teachers if you get the opportunity. Just say hello. Oh, what's it like working here? And they might be honest. Just remember, teachers do moan though, so they will generally just tell you the bad things. But you can still get a vibe. If they tell you all good things, and you know it's probably a good sign of the school. Ask about the policies. Don't be afraid to, they are hiring you at the end of the day. Like, you're not just going to become their subordinate. Like, it is also your life. So you can ask about, what do you do for teacher wellbeing here? Ask questions like that. What's your marking policy like here? What kind of average time do teachers kind of turn up and go home?
Things that will directly affect you.
It's your life, because all these things outside of directed time, they take for granted. Schools in general take for granted. We take for granted. So ask about it. Or when I'm not being paid, don't say this. Don't say it like this. When I'm not being paid after 3:45, how many hours on average do your teachers do unpaid work every week? You can ask that in a nice way without being sarcastic.
I think it can be really intimidating for someone at the start of their career to ask questions like that. I'll be really honest now. I would give this advice to a teacher. I think going back to when I was a trainee, going around schools, I would have been really scared to ask these questions.
I didn't ask those questions. I wish I did.
I was asking more generic stuff of just getting the vibe of the school. I feel like there's two different things here that you're saying, which both really important. Schools have a vibe. I can't describe to you enough. If you've only been in 2 or 3 schools for your training, you probably get the idea that they're different, right? But I honestly, walking into a school, I've never walked into 2 schools that have the same vibe. Yeah. Every school has a different vibe, even from the reception staff when you walk in. You can tell a lot from, their demeanor and how they treat people.
So many factors, isn't it? It's like you couldn't even pinpoint why. That's why it's so complex, I guess, because it could literally just be where the school is. Yeah. It could be the size of the school. It could be the way the SLT run it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Look at how the kids interact with the children. Yeah. Look at how the children are outside of lessons.
You just said, look at how the kids interact with the children.
Look at how the teachers interact with the children. But, honestly, small things like, do the kids say good morning? Do they open the door for you? Are they happy? Yeah, do they look like they're enjoying themselves? Yeah. There's such things you can't fake. And for me, the vibe of a school is impossible to fake, in my opinion. Yeah. And that's really important. But on the flip side, I completely agree with you. Ask those awkward questions. tell me what is the marking policy.
Yeah.
And if the school have a problem talking to you about it or think it's an issue, it's a red flag.
Yeah, definitely. There's a way to go about it. You know, I think my fear of doing it, if I was an ECT right now doing that, would be I don't want to come across
Black
annoying.
marks when you,
Do you know what I mean? So I would definitely balance it out with lots of positivity as well, and just drop in the occasional question like, oh yes, I've seen the marking. You know, and you just walk past teachers marking, but like, what is the marking policy like here? I'd be really interested to know, you know, what kind of workload the teachers have got at this school. I think you can drop in those questions if you sat there with your notepad and went through like 8 really hard questions that the head teacher might be like,
clearly
Christ,
only about your benefit.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're quite intense, aren't you? You know, I don't want this to go get like negatively.
Play the game.
But you should certainly find out because it is your life, and it will consume a lot of your life. So you should find out about it. Get the right school. That's my first tip. Basically, find the right school for you and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Fantastic. My tip, my first tip I thought when I thought, what would I say to a trainee right now who's going into a school? It kind of links to what we've already talked about, so this won't be too long. But I can't stress enough how important it is to build a relationship with your class, because you will have that class for one entire year. It's not insignificant. Okay, it's a very unique way of doing work. When you go into a job, you might have, you know, small projects, like at a different job where you're with a small team of 6 for 3 months, and then you're with another team of 12 for the next 2 months. Yeah, you're working directly with a client for a bit, or you've got 15 clients which are on, off, long term, short term. With a school, you know, you're dealt a hand in September. That's your hand for the year, and you know, you really have to build relationships with these children, because of course, all the benefits to do with education, that the kids get more out of it if they enjoy being in school, that et cetera, et cetera. But what I would say to a trainee is, no, this is for your well-being. This is for you, actually, because if you have a positive relationship with your class, if you put time into building that, getting to know your children as individuals, I think that is why I was successful as an NQT. Because if I look at my NQT year, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that year because I was still really, vibrant in my teaching. I was very enthusiastic. It does wane after time, absolutely. So whilst you've still got that, build that relationship with your class. That is the number one thing I do every year, which is if by Christmas I don't feel that relationship with my class, I think I failed personally. And that's not always true. Classes can be really hard to build a relationship with, and you can do your best, and it can still be tricky. So I don't want anyone to think it's their fault, but I just feel that way because it's how important it is to me to build that relationship.
Well, what about the advice, don't smile till Christmas then?
I think that's absolute beep, beep, beep. I think it's rubbish. I think it's complete nonsense. I get why it's a thing. So let me be really clear here. I don't think people saying that are coming from a horrible viewpoint.
Unpick it for us then, because I heard that as an NQT and an ECT. I keep saying NQT, sorry, whatever.
Yeah.
And I maybe didn't understand the nuances that you understand now. So really break it down for me. Why do people say don't smile till Christmas, and why do you actually not think it's a good idea?
So the whole point of don't smile till Christmas is, especially if you're a new teacher, you are a brand new face. You're probably quite young. You, like we said earlier, kids can sniff that out. They can sniff out someone with less confidence who's newer, who's younger. And there are some children who will try and take advantage of that. The whole point of not smiling until Christmas is that your entire focus during that first 2 terms should be to drill the children into their ways of behaving. That's unacceptable. I'm not a person here. I'm a vessel for your learning.
Yeah, I demand your respect.
I'm not Miss blah, blah, blah. I am teacher at your school. Do your work. And there's no chance for any kind of distraction, because what your number one priority should be is the children behaving in a certain way, the children doing their work to the best of their ability. No, I'm not your friend. I'm not happy. I think that's harmful, because I've always found that I get way more out of children if they enjoy being in school. That's how I find it. And look, doing it that way can open up problems of what we've talked about, hypocrisy. How far is too far? That's not easy to get right as a student teacher. And that's why I think people saying that to student teachers aren't always being horrible. They're trying to help them. Because they're saying, take that out of the equation then. You know, at first, just concentrate on them, learning the curriculum, getting really good behavior techniques, doing the right thing, and then slowly build a relationship with the children. I suppose if you're a newbie who's worried about behavior management, maybe you'd want to water it down at first and just really focus on them behaving the right way. And
showing them that actually you're not a pushover, you're not a walkover, just because you're not an experienced older teacher.
But I think you can do that with smiling.
Yeah.
So I think the way that I said is it's way too extreme for me.
Yeah.
I think you have to have really high standards in September. Even now when I start, really high standards. Do not accept anything less than the top standard of what you expect. But you know what? When the kids are doing that, mask off. I'm happy teacher. I'm Mr. Price. What a brilliant time we're going to have.
Yeah.
Isn't it? You are doing fantastic. That is fantastic work. Well done. Amazing, Sid. I love this class when they work so hard. No, we don't do that here. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You've got to do your work. Look at everyone else. Look how amazing they're doing. You've got to do your work. Okay.
What you're saying to me is, and I do this as well. I feel like I've gone on that journey as well. Is when I was an ECT, I never drew a line.
Sure.
I didn't have a line.
Yeah.
I just kind of was doing what I thought was all right.
Yeah.
Further down the line, sorry, using lots of line references here. Further down.
Which line are we on now?
Further through this journey. We're on the central line now. Further through this journey, I think I'm confident to say that I build nice relationships with my kids. I smile from day one.
Sure.
But I make it so abundantly clear to them. There is a line,
and it's a high
right
line.
Here. Here is the line. If you cross it, that behaviour is completely unacceptable, and you will not see the nice, happy side of me.
Yeah.
If on this side, you will. So stay on this side of the line.
Completely.
And as an NQT, I didn't do that. I was just like, I just need them to love me.
Yeah. And that is, I think, why it's a very simplistic phrase. And I think it is coming from a place of good. It's coming from a place of trying to help people. I think what I would say to an ECT is have incredibly high standards. And when your children are meeting that, praise them. Make them happy, be fun. That's fine, but don't waver. Maybe this is what I'd add to this then now. Don't waver on that line. Don't waver on that expectation. Don't let one kid dip below it when you know they're capable of being above that line.
Yeah.
Because that is how you're going to build respect and consistency. Someone can't get away with something someone else does.
Yeah.
Of course, I know people are listening going, well, what about all of these needs? And it's, of course, that's different. I'm talking about when you know. Yeah, of course. When you know, don't drop below that line. What's your next one?
Nice. Next one's a bit of a short one, really. But just bear in mind, I wish I knew that. I guess I learned this, but...
As you've become one.
Yeah, as I've become one. Older teachers, on average, and I'm being really careful with my words here, are just a bit more resentful.
That's just true. Yeah.
Of the job.
Yeah, of course.
Education. If you listen to this podcast, you've heard us moan about certain things. We try to be positive, but we also are not afraid to talk about the crap things. Older teachers are generally more resentful, a bit more bitter about the job.
So what would you say to an ECT then?
Been through the rung. Just don't let it impact you too much.
Sure.
Be your own person.
So what's the practicality of this then? Because let's say, I'm going to defend these resentful teachers because it's us, I suppose, is what we're talking about now.
Yeah.
They're resentful because they've lived through it and they can see what's pointless and they can see what's stupid about this job and they can see what, why is that not a good thing then for an ECT to go, oh, well, I can fast track my understanding and kind of get that there's no point me doing this or that. What are you saying then an ECT should ignore? What should they still be able to do?
I'm saying, right, okay, so... You're probably, as an ECT, way more passionate than most members of staff at your school.
Almost certainly.
Probably,
yeah.
Right? Not everyone, but most ECTs I meet are extremely passionate and they will want to put that extra time in. And the resentful teachers will be saying, don't do that, you're wasting your time. Don't do that. No, don't do that, because then this. Don't do that. Don't do this. Do you know what I mean? Like there's that. You've got to kind of ignore it, because do you know what? If you want to do what we did, and so we can't be hypocrites here, and we spent our first couple of years teaching, living and breathing that job. Our life was in a different place then. We were very, very different people. And if you're an ECT that's young, you might be in a similar situation where you want to plough a couple of hours in the evening to making this funny PowerPoint that's going to be a sweet game on Friday maths lesson. And the other teachers are like, oh, don't do that. Waste of time. We'll just get one off.
You're making me look bad. Don't do that.
Yeah, that's the worst one. You've got to kind of be like, yeah. But also don't let it impact you too much. If you want to do that thing, do that thing. Because you know what? The kids will enjoy it. And if you enjoy it as well, what is the harm? That might change over the years. It changed for us.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I'm not going to sit here and say, like, as if I could talk to our past selves and be like, don't do any of that stuff.
I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it at the time.
Yeah.
I loved it. I had the time to do it and I loved doing it and it enriched a lot of the kids' experiences.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it now. I'm not doing it now. I won't.
Completely.
Because my life's very different now.
Yeah.
So just bear that in mind, I think. New teachers, it can be quite overbearing sometimes, especially if you're going to a school with lots of older teachers. They can kind of force it down your throat and be like, no, don't do any of this fun stuff.
I'm kind of going to lead on to that with my point, but I'm going to add to yours really quickly. I would say, as someone who's been in the school with ECTs, having been one, having been in the school where I'm more experienced and seen ECTs come through, I want to add to that and say that as an ECT, don't think that you're automatically worse than everyone else. I've seen ECTs come in and being top 5 teachers in the school.
Yeah,
immediately, and because they're so
Dylan
passionate.
does rank us every year.
No, but what I mean is, it's not a simple case of the more you've been teaching, the better you are. It doesn't work like that, and people might not like hearing this with their experienced teachers.
Yeah,
you've got better at different things, right?
Yeah,
but you know, just because you're an ECT doesn't mean that everything everyone says who's older than you or more experienced is necessarily true or necessarily better. I would say personally, you could probably pick out a week from my NQT year and a random week from me 6 years in, and it could well be that my week in NQT year was better. For various reasons.
I think it's quite likely. Yeah,
completely, for different reasons.
More time in.
Yeah, put more time in. Like, the week from me 6 years in might be better because I know the curriculum so much better, or I'm really strict. Like, I really know my behaviour management now. But there will be aspects of my NQT year, ECT year, if you're a newbie. If you're not in schools, all of this just means new teacher, which is better for a number of reasons. So, just do yourself. You've just trained. Just trained. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you know what you're doing. You've qualified. You are a teacher.
Yeah.
Go with it. Just do it.
Complacency is a killer. It really is. And I remember thinking, I'll never be complacent. I am complacent already. I'm at that point where I know what works now. And I do find it harder to bring on new ideas or even go out of my way to look for new ideas because I'm like, I know what works for me.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention that because my next point, it kind of goes against that, but it's more like as you learn. And I think what's really important is, we've just talked about how you must do you, basically, right? But I think the way that you can do that healthily is to really have clear boundaries in your own life. Learn to say no to something when it directly impacts what you do outside of school. Teaching is a job. You can be really passionate about it. You can want to do the extra paying on a Friday night. Amazing. But you know what? If you have a yoga class booked at 4:30 on a Tuesday, and your school comes to you and say, tomorrow it'd be really good if you can just get this done. Can you stay late and get that done for me? It's okay to say no. In your ECT, and if the school judge you for that, then that's on the school. But you don't have to shift your life for this. If part of your life is you want to do that, crack on. But if you've got something else and you think to yourself, but I am new at this school and I do really want to leave a really good impression, and I guess I'll just have to leave that for this week. You don't. You can still do what you do. Yeah. You need to have a life.
You can make a good impression as well still. I've met a lot of teachers over my time who I would say fall into that category of they're quite competent to say no. But do you know what? I think within that category, there's quite a big scope of teachers who are kind of just rude about it and actually do then make a bad impression. And they are generally like, that teacher always moans. And there are other teachers who...
yourself? Or?
Yeah, me. And there are other teachers who are able to say no to things, who are still really well respected, and it doesn't have a negative impact at all. And it has made me think there is a way of doing it, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, let's take that exact example. You've booked a yoga thing at 4:30 next Tuesday. No one else knows about this, but you. But that's fine because you're thinking, well, it's not my directed time. Yeah. I'll just get my marking done in the morning if I need to go home early or whatever.
Yeah.
And someone comes up to you and says, SLT that maybe you've got a good relationship with. Really, really need this thing for tomorrow. I'm so sorry it's late. I know I should have told you last week, but we've got to get this done for tomorrow. You could say, no, I'm not doing that. And you could be quite abrupt and maybe come across like in a certain way.
I don't have to explain it. I'm saying no.
Yeah, I'm saying no, sorry. I'm not directed time. I'm going home. Or you could also just explain, like, no, I would love to do this. I'm really sorry I can't help you out because I've got this thing booked and I can't miss it.
Or I don't want to.
Is there another way, maybe you can have a look at this tonight and I'll get in, I'll come in 5 minutes early in the morning. I'll just have a quick look over the morning. I think there's just a way you can say no that doesn't impact the impression that you give to SLT. And I think that, and I want to say that because I was scared of that.
Yeah.
The impression meant a lot to me and it still does, but I can definitely say no more now and not say it in a way where I'm just immediately shunned.
Nice way. And I think having a good relationship with your SLT helps in that. And again, if you're doing it in that respectful way and still getting pushback from SLT, it is a red flag. And it's, you're not the problem. You are not the problem in that situation. I don't want anyone new to think, it's because I didn't cancel my, my thing that I did at half. It's not. It's because the school in that case are wrong and there should be a workaround. And if someone's giving you a job that has to be done the day after, that's their problem. It's not your problem. So please don't think it is. That's what I'd say to people.
Yeah, nice. Next tip. So this one, bit of wisdom for you. I'd like to pretend it's from me, but really it's just from all the lessons I learned over the years of being, having older teachers talk to me. Good teaching practice.
For anyone who's listening, Hayden did inverted commas there.
Whatever that means.
Good.
Good teaching practice, that phrase there, it's like fashion. Treat it like fashion, genuinely.
Well, it looks good.
Yeah, it looks really
Yeah.
good. No, things go out of fashion and they come back in fashion as well. And I guarantee if you've been training, you've probably already heard this from one of the older teachers. I remember it will come back around. We used to do this thing 20 years ago until it was not the cool thing to do anymore. And I always used to I didn't really pay attention when teachers said that.
When you're a new teacher, you think you're the dog's, don't you? You think, I've just trained. I've got the best up-to-date knowledge.
Absolutely.
What would you say to an NQT who's thinking that?
I said, do you know what? The chances are a lot of the new research is really good. But I tell you what, there's a lot of old stuff as well that is equally good. And for some reason, for whatever, I don't know why this happens, but some things get pushed out and say, we don't do things like that anymore. Maybe a new government comes in and they've got their own prerogative. They've got their own research. Again, inverted commas there. And they say, no, this is the way now. Actually, we have to teach maths in this way and everything else is terrible.
Well, the classic one I'm going to come to very quickly for anyone to hold on to is we used to teach maths where we do addition and subtraction 3 times a year.
Spiral curriculum.
It's called spiral because you come back to it.
Yeah.
We come back to multiplication before Christmas, after Christmas, before summer. And now very much it's accepted that you just do all of addition at once. All of multiplication at once in what's called block teaching. So that's changed. And, did I, as someone who did the spiral curriculum, did I not learn maths? Of course I learned maths well because I had a good teacher.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of point you're making.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And when I was in ECT, when the new national curriculum was coming in, and it was all about mastery and the block teaching, I was very much like spiral teaching, absolutely terrible. You're an awful teacher if you do that. It's so been proven because I've just trained. Okay, I've just trained, and I've learned that is a terrible way to do it. And other teachers will be sort of rolling their eyes like, yeah, all right, give it 20 years. That'll be the way to do it again. Well, and it is true.
We kind of spiral now where it's like, but the problem with block teaching, again, I'm going to be really specific to give you points if you're listening. The problem with block teaching was that you don't do addition and subtraction again. If you just follow block, you don't do it after October for the rest of the school year. And that's obviously also mad. So we go back and do starters and practice it throughout the year.
Yeah, so we
basically spiraling.
Yeah, we put the spiral curriculum in our starters with anyway. But just bear that in mind. Teaching practice is like fashion. Try not to take everything as gospel just because you learned it. Because I tell you what, in 5 years, when you're suddenly not the ECT and the new ECTs are coming in and saying, actually, no, this is the best way to do it, you're going to be thinking, well, that's weird because 5 years ago I learned this thing and it's all worked really well since then. And it's out of fashion now. There's new ways to do it. So just take it all with a bit of a pinch of salt. Try not to get too personally involved in the pedagogy and stuff. It's all good. It's what you make of it, really, that makes a difference.
Nice. Cool. Well, my point, I suppose, again, I've got a bit of a theme here where if anyone listens to the podcast every week, they might be thinking, who is this guy? but again, what I'm saying is this is for someone who's just finishing their training. This is for someone who still has that oomph. Because why would you be doing it otherwise? You must really want to be a teacher. You're really passionate about it. You're really excited about starting your job. And do you know what, guys? It is the best job. It is the best job when you're with the children. So what I would say to someone starting their ECT journey is throw yourself into it at first. Whilst you've got the time, okay? If you're like Hayden and I, where you're a young professional, we were 22 when we started teaching, no family of our own, lived at home, all of that situation. But that situation allowed us to really throw ourselves into the job. And what I would say to everyone is throw yourself into the extracurricular stuff. Throw yourself into the trips. Go on them. If you've got a week residential and you can go, experience it. It's amazing. Seeing the children in a different context and learning, that's what you're passionate. That's what I love to see. Children doing their best, trying things out for the first time, and you're there helping them do that and looking after them. Throw yourselves into it because you can, over the years, if you've tried it, you can at least say, well, I've done it, I loved it, but now at this point in my life, actually, I've got other priorities and I can't go now. But you know what? I don't think anyone would ever regret doing it. You'd only regret not ever trying it. And I'd say to people, run that football club. Do that club at lunchtime with those kids who are really passionate about origami. So you say to them, why don't you come back for 15 minutes? We'll do some origami at lunchtime.
Yeah.
Or, if you get asked to go on that school trip and you can, go on that school trip. My point here is throw yourself into the profession because then you can draw yourself back as well.
Yeah.
And if there's something you don't want to try, fine. We've already said, learn to say no. But if there's something you do want to try, don't listen to people like us who are like, I'm not doing it. It's like, that's fine. That is completely fine. But if you are passionate and you want to experience these things about what's amazing about school, because objectively going on trips is really fun. It's tiring. It's not a holiday. It's a big part of the job that we should be compensated for. But guess what? If you want to do it, go and do it. Try it out.
Yeah. Great tip. You got me there. I'm gripped.
We're not doing it now. We've done it 8 years.
Yeah.
I'm not trying anything.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think if there's nothing to add to that. I really do agree, and I don't regret it. You said people won't regret it, and actually I was thinking, no, I don't regret it. I don't regret going to watch the football team from my class at another school after school one day because I had a little competition. I don't regret driving to that school and just going and supporting them watch. I wasn't the coach. I just wanted to go and watch, and they loved it. They told me when they saw my face there as their teacher, they were like, oh yeah, motivated. We've got to win. Like our teachers come all this way to see us. Like. And I haven't done that in a while.
Because you built that relationship.
Yeah, maybe it all comes full circle.
But yeah, we haven't done that in a while. But maybe you could address that now. Like, we're not being hypocritical, I don't think. Can you explain what is the difference?
Things just change. Do you know what? Because I've got a child now. Honestly, that's the biggest thing. It's like, I do actually just want to go home though and spend time with my actual own child, and I've got a house to look after. I lived with my mum at this time. I've got a house to look after now. I've got a relationship with my partner.
Got cook dinner, which sounds ridiculous.
It's just those things do get in the way, and it is okay to say no and not do those things anymore. But I am glad I did it when I could.
Sure.
And I'm glad I didn't listen to all the people who were, saying, they were maybe bitter by that point, who would never do it, and were like, no, don't do that. Don't waste your time. Get your marking done. Go home. Go on. Go and enjoy your evening. To me, that was enjoying my evening.
Yeah.
Because I went and watched my kids.
You would have been sat in your bedroom, not doing anything otherwise.
So just do it. Throw yourself into it, and then, like Dylan said, draw back. If you don't like it, don't do it anymore.
Absolutely.
Simple. Cool. At least you've experienced it.
Go on, Hayden. What's your last tip?
Yeah, no, I just want to bring around to teaching a bit more because a lot of this is kind of like meta-y kind of thinking.
Generic stuff.
Tech. Use it. Honestly, like kids grow up with tech now. They have done for the last 10, 15 years. It's so commonplace.
But
now.
Hayden, kids shouldn't have screen time ever.
Whatever. Honestly, have you seen your smartboard? It's a massive screen. Get over it. Just use it.
Let's make a difference between the algorithm and social media and smartphones and tech in general. Tech is really positive. Go on. What can we do?
Right. Do this experiment if you want. It's quite fun because we've definitely done it. Film yourself teaching your input, right? Just as you would do it, right? And put it on your screen as a video and watch how unbelievably engaged your children are versus if you just did that input live in front of them. It is mad. I don't know why. I'm sure there's a whole study out there that shows the psychology
Well, you're suddenly a YouTuber.
Yeah.
If you do a video.
Yeah. Why kids
But we've done that.
Videos.
What have we done then? Because we were in our probably NQT year or maybe 1 year after.
Yeah, it was.
Give an example.
So
what did we do?
Back in the day, Dylan and I, we wanted to make a maths lesson really engaging, and I went around his house and we filmed, just on our phone, we filmed a bunch of word problems.
For fractions, wasn't it?
For fractions, but we did it in real life context. So for the one that always jumps out to me, well, a few of them. First one, he was playing Mario Kart.
Mario Odyssey.
Mario Odyssey. What was that on?
Collecting coins. Switch,
which was fairly new at that point. You had a Nintendo Switch. It just come out.
That hooked the lads, a lot of the lads. Some of the girls, obviously, but a lot of the lads were like, oh.
It was great. And as you were going through, it had it kept count of how many coins you'd collected. And we'd use that as a fraction. It was like, you collect 27 out of 50. How many more does you need to get, or whatever? What equivalent fraction
What's
is
the
this?
percentage or something?
Whatever it was. Yeah. And then the next video was with a baguette. Dylan cut it into 3 pieces, and it was like, what fractions?
If it weighs this much, how much does each piece weigh?
Yeah, stuff like that. So we just made these tricky word problems, and they were just 20-second videos. About 5 of them we made. One was like kicking a football. I can't remember what we did with it, but it was just fun, and we had the time to do it. And the kids absolutely loved it. They got so much out of that lesson, and they were dying to solve the problems. And we drew all of the great maths learning out of it, and they achieved really, really well. And I think we've done. I'm trying to think what else we've done. You did a video on adverbs,
just like verbs and adverbs. Yeah, I'd film myself moving. Yeah, and you can teach stuff with this. Like we would engage the children without them knowing they're learning. That's what I find really amazing, because I'd film various staff moving in certain ways, and I'd simply say to the children, how are they moving? As soon as you got that how word, that's a verb and an adverb, isn't it? You could add like moving, walking slowly. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not walking that slowly. How would you actually describe it? And they might say creeping, those different words for walking.
Like adverbials or something.
You've just got that built in then. And I think the other point I'd make is that's an easy win, something we did at the start of our career. But we've seen, even in the 8, 9, 10 years we've been teaching, tech has moved so much. And we've got the advent now of AI. There is so much out there. Just get yourselves on social media. I know there's someone, obviously Mr. P posts a lot about AI. Teacher using AI, which is someone who we have a lot of interaction with on Instagram.
Yeah.
He's posting very often about how teachers can use AI to help their planning, but also to engage the children.
Yeah.
And there's honestly, guys, there's an endless open book of different things you can use. If you want, let us know. We'll do a whole podcast episode about different tech you can use. Doesn't have to be AI. You can have things called, I think it's Booklet or Bookit or something like that, where it's just like an interactive quiz. And they can log in on
I really want to use that next week.
So yeah, I think there's lots out there, and yeah, don't be afraid to use it.
Yeah, teaching's outdated. Honestly, it's quite outdated. Like worksheets and writing books and stuff, it is boring, and it is quite outdated. And there's so much out there now. Yeah,
and the more you do in books, the more you have to sit and mark, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Just get on it. I mean, just one last example, right? Me and Dylan and I have been making loads of education videos. We've got a YouTube channel. We've got like over 200 videos on there now. And when the kids in our
over
class,
11,000 subscribers.
when the kids like see it, they love it. I've put a video on in my class before because you did like an 8-minute video on finding fractions of amounts years ago on our channel. And I literally thought to myself, what will be more effective? Me reciting that video, because obviously I know how to teach it as well, or just putting the video on. And the kids were literally glued to the screen watching you solve fractions of amounts questions. I paused it every now and then. So go and get your whiteboard out. You have a go at that one before he does it on the screen. And it's just mad. I can't stress how much more kids engage with stuff when it's on a screen or just tech in general. Anyway,
so kids are always going to be that way. Let's take advantage of it as a teacher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last point from me, and this is a really big point I wish someone stressed to me a lot, is, how can I put this? Don't believe the fear-mongering on angry parents, okay? I think there's a lot these days where people say, oh, parents aren't like they used to. They're always on the kid's side. Instead, they should be on the teacher's side. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying it hasn't shifted in certain respects. What I am saying is, in my 9 years of teaching, I have very, very rarely interacted with a parent who is completely beyond reasoning with.
Yeah, like horribly rude, shouting at you.
What I would say straight away, 90% of parents, 95% of parents are either completely neutral or extremely supportive and nice and really lovely and always listen to what you've got to say. And if their child have been misbehaving, it's an easy conversation to have with them. So that's the first thing I'd say. You're always going to get some parents, and maybe you'll have more just through luck, like bad luck rather, that are more tricky to deal with. And as an NQT, what I'd say to you is, in those situations, write everything down. Get someone with you as quickly as possible. So if you're isolated on the playground with an angry parent, try and get someone close to you. If you're dismissing the children, dismissing at least twos, because we've had this a million times where I've had to not step in, I don't interrupt the conversation, but both people know I'm near and I can hear exactly what's going on. Yeah. I can just corroborate a bit better and there's just the extra person there. So if you find yourself in a situation with a parent like that, in the moment, try and get everything written down, or straight after, try and get someone to witness it, and also go straight to your SLT and be a whole, have a joint effort in actually doing that. Don't try and deal with it yourself. There's no point, because people can bend what you say, and it can be a whole nightmare, because there are obviously some parents out there who will, push the boat out and are not very nice.
And you're not actually their servant.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? With public servants, you're not actually their personal servant where you just have to sit there and take it. Like, I've not been very confident with that sort of stuff over the years, but I think I'm more confident now. If you are in a dire situation, maybe you are isolated or whatever, you can honestly just say, excuse me, sorry, you're shouting at me, and I'm not going to have a conversation with you when you're angry like this. So come and see me in the office. Let's book a meeting. I'm not talking to you now. Like, you're not going to lose your job over that. Do you know what I mean? Just by being a bit, because they might then shout at you even more, and you can walk away. Yeah. No, you're not going to get in trouble. Basically, don't be thinking, I don't want to say anything to upset this parent, mate. They're already shouting at you, screaming at you. Yeah. It doesn't matter at this point. You just need to diffuse the situation, get away if you're
don't
by
walk
yourself.
Away, tail between your legs, crying about it, because that's the worst option.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that crying about it would be a bad reaction. Some people get really upset by these bad interactions because you put your life on the line with this job. It's not a normal
job. And you
job.
probably will get upset about it at least afterwards.
But what I mean is, don't just accept that. Don't just think that's okay.
Yeah. They've treated me like
it's
crap.
not part of the job to feel that way from a parent.
Especially if they're wrong, which the chances are, if they're shouting at you, they've misunderstood something. Maybe you have done something wrong and you need to own it and have a meeting. And I'm not saying teachers aren't perfect. There probably have been lots of teachers over the years that have just made a bad decision and it's impacted their career or whatever. But you know what? The chances are, if you're a new teacher, you're trying your hardest, you might have just done something that unsavory and a parent didn't like it. And
get someone else in the room.
Yeah.
Get it involved. Yeah. But going back to my original point, be on guard for that. But please, guys, understand that most parents are so nice. I think Hayden and I over the years have built such nice relationships with parents. We built a tutoring business based on our relationship with parents who were had such a positive relationship with them. They wanted us to keep teaching their child and they couldn't. So we built our tutoring business around that. It did. And that's one, I'm not saying you should do it because you can build a tutoring business. What I'm saying is, you can put effort in, can't you, Hayden, to build that?
Yeah, 100%. I realised there's a bit of a theme going through this whole episode, really, which, in point one, we talked about building the right relationship with the school that you're looking around, asking questions in the right way so you don't give the wrong impression, but you still come across confident. We've talked about building relationships with the children and how that will make a huge impact to your well-being and also the experience of the children. And now we're talking about building a relationship with the parents. It's all a conscious effort. You do have to think about it. I'm sure some people are just naturally, we know some teachers, don't we? I can think of some that are just naturally like the nicest people on the planet. But most of us are just quite
horrible.
Normal.
How do you do it?
I'm horrible. Yeah, most of us are just quite normal, and we do have to really go out of our ways. So how could our last bit then? How can we actually build? What can we do? What things can we do to build a nice relationship with a parent?
And this goes with nice relationship with the class, even with your colleagues. Heap positivity on them. That's my number one thing all the time. If someone deserves praise, give it to them. You don't need to make up praise. Yeah. You don't need to manufacture it if they've been awful or just pretend they're nice. No, that's not what I'm saying. But if they're doing the right thing, heap praise on the children. Yeah. And this goes with the parents as well. If a child's been amazing that day or just gone above and beyond and has just, wow, you were so nice to that other child who was upset. You didn't need to do that. That's nothing to do with our learning today. Yeah. Do you know what? End of the day, I'm going to come and talk to your parents and tell them how amazing you were. I'm going to send home a certificate that week with an explanation as to why.
Someone told me when I started teaching, and it stuck with me. They said, bear this in mind, that most parents will assume that if you call them over at the end of the day, that it's a negative thing. Yeah. And they were trying to say to me, they were like, let's try and change that, because that's actually not a good thing. And it does show that we tend to ignore the good stuff and we pick out bad behavior. It's the same with kids. We do it all the time. We tend not to say anything about the kid that's just perfectly behaved every single day. But when the naughty kid does something good, we're like, wow, well done. And then that other kid that's always well behaved. It's the same with parents. And I think a little activity for you. If you are an ECT already, you've got a class, or if you've maybe got a training class, whatever, have a little look through the class list and genuinely try to think about how many times you've interacted with their parents. Because you might be surprised to realise that actually 90% of your class, you've either not spoken to their parents outside of parents' evening, or maybe you've only ever spoken to them if it's a negative thing. And try to go out of your way, maybe even make it a ritual, like once per week. Every week I'm going to pull a kid's parent over from the playground and say something nice about them. It goes such a long way. And do you know what? Even one or two parents I found you do that with, they then tell all the other parents, oh, isn't that Mr. Stevens lovely? Gee, pull me over. Do you know what he did today? On their social media forum where all the parents are, because they've always got something, haven't they? It goes a long way to building a nice relationship with all the parents in the class. So yeah, try that. Do it this week.
Amazing. Guys, that's our tips. And that is actually the end of the episode now. We've had a long chat there. Really hope you found this useful. You can follow us on Instagram at Teach, Sleep, Repeat Podcast. You can follow us on all of your podcast platforms. Couldn't think of the word then. And guys, can you give us a review if you've got this far and you found it useful?
Spotify,
it really helps
Apple,
us. Yeah.
We're buzzing for some reviews, especially on Apple. We've got a bit less on there. So it'll be really great. We got a bit, God damn it. We'll cut that down, shall we?
Yeah. So guys, thank you so much. We'll see you again next week. We have a guest next week. Ooh. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.